Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Backshed Bible Study. This is Cliff Carey here. It is Monday, December 14th. This is episode 37 of the Backshed, which means we have been in COVID chaos for 40 weeks, ladies and gentlemen. What a joy it is. No, seriously, it is a joy because we've gotten to see God do some pretty amazing things over that season. And I can't believe we have been doing this Backshed thing for 37 weeks. So I am thrilled to welcome to the Backshed here this morning a great old friend. This is Brandon Setter. Brandon, welcome on board. It is so fun to have you joining us this morning.
Hey everyone, good morning. I'm coming live from...
Brandon, what have I done?
What?
I've muted you. Let's see.
No, here, let me unmute.
We're gonna figure out what's going on here. So I apologize for what I have done there. Okay, let's give it a try. Brandon,
can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Oh, great, perfect. Hey everybody, I'm coming live from Costa Mesa, California, down here in the good old SoCal.
And you are in the OC, or as
OC.
Back when I lived down there, we said it was life behind the orange curtain.
I don't really know what that means other than I try and stay behind the 405 freeway, closer to the coast, as best I can.
So if you're south of the 405 there, you're in the zone right there.
Yeah, you're in the comfort zone you're in coastal weather all the time.
Coastal, which means you get June gloom and all those.
But as soon as you cross that freeway, forget it. You're back into hot weather most of the time, even on days like this.
All the years that I lived in Orange County, which was like 2, but I always lived like right on the border of LA and Orange County. So, you and I both went to Biola.
Yep.
I lived in La Mirada and Fullerton and Cerritos and all those areas right around there. So I claimed Orange County for a while, but.
Those Biola days right there. Those are good ones.
Hey, I want to say a good morning to Gary Crane joining us all the way from Texas. Gary, how is retirement going? Man, you guys moved out there and are settled in. Brandon, you'll appreciate this. Gary retired from working at the Cessna Pilot Center. I don't know. That's not the right word. But Gary fixed Cessnas, jets is what he worked on here in Sacramento, and then retired recently out to Texas, and they built a house out there. So Gary, good to have you here. Maggie Lagos, good to have you joining us. Probably, I'm assuming you're back in Palm Desert. Might still be in Tennessee. Kathy, welcome back. Kathy, I didn't know you went to Biola. Very cool. All right. Brandon, what's the weather like down there south of the 405 this morning?
Oh man, today is a balmy 63 degrees, I'd imagine, outside. We have partly cloudy skies, and I just feel like that's where I got to go with this.
Right, exactly.
Radio voice there, Cliff, but it's pretty nice down here today. I woke up and my van was soaked with water, though, and I'm not sure where that came from. So maybe I have a broken sprinkler? I'm not sure.
You guys don't know what that's like. We've had major storms up here, and then I woke up, it was 42 in fog here in beautiful Fair Oaks this morning. So
yeah, I'm expecting 72 today, maybe 75, I'd imagine.
Well, Brandon, this is fun to have you here. You and I go back to the Hume Lake days, and I remember watching you grow up as a kid.
For sure.
Probably one of my favorite memories of you is this time of the year is you're one of the only kids I've ever known that would ride a bike through the snow pretty consistently. I
think that kind of just holds true in my life now. That was the beginning of liking adventurous things.
Right.
And so to this very day, I'm probably the one kid that's like, what do you want to do this weekend? It's snowing outside. You want to go camping? And that's okay with me.
But I think what would be fun here for a second, and a lot of our viewers know that we had Noel Lilly on here a few weeks back.
Oh man, so good.
Noel's the Army Ranger, and we just had an amazing time with Noel. So you and Noel grew up together, and you guys grew up as, we kind of called you Hume brats. You know, your parents are working in the ministry at Hume Lake Christian Camps, and they're giving their lives up, and you know, they've moved out of the city to live up in the mountains, and here you are growing up as I think you guys moved up there when you were what, like 7 years old or something?
Yeah,
like
about
that?
I think I was 10, but
Okay.
most of my memories are Hume.
Right. So all that growing up, what was that like growing up in, you know, a remote mountain environment with you know, a few other kids? For a while, there wasn't even a school, and so on. But yeah, tell us a little bit about that. This kind of just builds a little context for
Yeah,
where
that's a
today,
good
hopefully.
context, I'd say. For many years, so I moved to Hume when I was 10. My mom and dad moved up there. My dad to be the maintenance manager, and my mom to come along for the ride, and then later became, you know, like the general
Ran the
store,
general store. Loved
you
your
know, the
mom.
woman that everyone sees at the general store. And for me, there were seasons of growing up. It was truly like being a pastor's kid, a missionary kid. You know, for those of you who haven't experienced that, your mom and dad are in ministry, but you didn't necessarily choose that life. That's just what you have. But I think I found myself at one season resenting it, and then in another season very quickly after that. That was probably my early teenager, 13-year-old age.
Sure.
You know, shortly after that, going, this is the coolest thing that I could have ever imagined. I grew up in the mountains. I don't have to come home when the street lights are on. I just play in the forest. We go mountain biking and motorcycle riding and play in the woods. And I mean, that was a pretty cool way to grow up.
But what about the bears and the bobcats and the mountain lions?
Okay, so there's this one mini story. I won't go too long. But we lived in a house at Hume, and there was one winter specifically where we had a wood burning stove. So I went outside to chop some wood. I was probably 12 years old, and middle of the night, and you know that sound that snow makes when you step on it and it's fresh snow, it like
crunching snow.
It like creaks. It goes
right.
Yeah, it's like the squishing creak sound. And our porch light was out this year. So I'm out on the front porch, kneeling on the porch, and I hear that creaking snow sound. And just this, my spine begins to tingle. Totally. You know, you're like, you know something's not
you're
right.
Being stalked.
And something is there. And I'm kneeling on the deck, and I feel the boards of the deck move. You know, that like shifting feeling while I'm kneeling on the deck chopping wood. And I look to my right, and, you know, here to this chair probably is a bear looking at me. And I'm just like...
And that was not a big deck.
Very small deck. Cliff, yes. You know the deck.
I know. I lived in that house for a
period of time. You lived in that house. And very small deck. And the screen door opens towards the deck. So I had a split moment, and I, like, eyes as big as cantaloupes, pitch black, run around the screen door, come inside and close the door. And my parents are like, "Are you okay?" And I couldn't speak. No words came out other than, "There's a bear." And they're like, "Yeah, okay, sure."
Right, whatever. Right.
And we look out the window, and you can see my knee prints and the bear's paw prints. And I was only 12. So it's probably either he was wondering what I was doing or wondering if I was meal sized. I'm not sure which, but that's totally.
Yeah. And you were not a large 12.
No, I was a small 12, no doubt. Yeah, definitely. And that was just one of many bear moments. But later, as we got older, we went to find the bears. It wasn't so much let them come to us, but we would like spend time hanging out, me and Noel.
Yep.
At the trash dump at Hume, where the compactors were, sitting on top of the trash bins, waiting for bears to come get the trash and watch them into the dark. So that was later. But
we could tell bear stories all day long.
12-year-old fear.
Right. I'll never forget, because I'll finish. We'll move on from here. But I will never forget when my first summer, maybe my second summer working at Hume, I was working with young kids. We had a day camp program, they called it. And we were out on what you know as the upper lawn, or, you know, we have a few of our viewers who know what I'm talking about when I say the upper lawn. And and in the middle of a game of big game of sharks and minnows, a bear comes walking across the lawn. And we had that week, I think it was the second week of the summer, so we had a number of Hume like family kids that were in day camp, and all of the kids that were the city kids that were up visiting took off running as far as they could away from the bear, and all the Hume kids chased the bear. It was just this classic moment, and it's like these. I think Evan may have been one of them, or Tiffany, but anyway. Hey,
I just have this mental picture of two crowds of kids going different directions.
Right, it's exactly
bear,
what happened.
One away from the bear.
The Red Sea parted. And,
yeah.
Oh man. Hey, good morning, Noel Lilly. Welcome. It is fun to have you here watching this morning. That's good. So Brandon, all right. So you grow up at Hume Lake. You know, you hit your teen years. One of the really cool privileges that I had with you was going on a mission trip to Thailand. And you know, I'll never forget what we got to be able to do there. And but let's talk a little bit about you've developed a heart for missions over the years, and I got to watch you on that Thailand trip, just seeing God work in you and use you. But how has God like worked and developed in you a heart for missions over the years? And actually, before that, answer that in a second. But tell us about Jessica.
Okay, so this is Cliff's secret segue to telling about my wife Jess, because I believe that he had a secret plan in this journey of meeting my wife. I don't know. This is just my backstory belief of this story.
We'll
but
see.
Jess is my wife. We've been married 11 and a half years. And we met, and we tell everybody, we met on a missions trip to Thailand with Cliff Carey. And so the short version of meeting my wife is we grew up as Hume kids together. We knew each other, but we hung out in totally different groups of friends.
Right.
I thought she was a weird Lord of the Rings kid, and I was a mountain bike kid. So
well, she did dress up as a Lord of the Rings character a few times.
Absolutely, yes. And now I love that about my wife. But then I was just like, that's so weird. All right, so we go on a mission trip to Thailand. We're on our way home. The plane is overbooked somehow. Cliff negotiates first class tickets to make sure that we're all on the flight. I got one of the first class tickets. You probably remember all this, Cliff. I don't know if you remember it this way, but this is how I remember this story.
This is really good. You're bringing back some good memories.
Yeah, and so Cliff negotiates first class tickets for probably 5 to 7 people on this team, because
we had 27 people on our team, and 10 of us got first class.
10, and I got my name first class, and I'm going to board the plane, and Cliff goes, "Hey, where are all the people who got first class?" And then he points at me and goes, "You got one, right? Give me that ticket." And then he fully takes the ticket from me, swaps a different seat. It turns out to be the seat right next to Jess. I don't know if that was planned or not, but I believe it might have been. Anyways,
I wanted all the. This was awful. We were putting, we put all of the adults and all the chaperones and everybody upstairs in the plane in first class, and left all of the kids downstairs.
Which, now as a missions leader myself, will go there. I would have totally done the same thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, 100%.
It was just God at work, Brandon. God was at work that day.
I believe that. And I really do believe that, because I ended up spending the next 12 hours, and this was the year of the San Diego fires.
Yep. Yeah.
And so on our way home, we had to circle the LA basin with our plane for an extra 3 hours.
We were out over the ocean for a good hour and a half.
Yeah, it was a long time.
In a hold. Yeah.
It was super weird. But that plane flight, I ended up sitting next to Jess the whole time. I was planning on ignoring her with my iPod. And throughout the flight, she would just pull my earbud out and then insist on talking to me. And I was like, okay, thanks. That's enough now. Put my earbud back in, and she would pull it out again and talk about something else. And what was cool is that 13-hour, 12-hour flight, or whatever it ended up being, was 12 hours for us to break down all the assumptions that we had about each other growing up in the same sphere, and realizing at the end of it, wow, I've known you most of my life, but I don't know you at all, and you're pretty cool.
Right.
And that was the beginning of a friendship that then turned into a relationship that then turned into a marriage. Right there.
Yeah, see, that's
Yeah.
I love that. You guys had known each other forever, but it took that flight for you the door to be open for you. And Jessica comes from an amazing family,
No doubt.
right?
No
And I
doubt.
have for those of you that were old school Humites of the 90s and early 2000s. Jessica's dad, Norm Daniels, was the one who used to design and paint all of our backdrops, all the sets and everything at Hume. Just incredibly talented mom, and her dad, and talented man. And her mom, Patsy, was like the most incredible person, homeschooled all the kids. And
Yeah.
so,
And
yeah.
they turned out normal. So, like some homeschool kids, but
my wife was homeschooled.
But many turn out awesome. So if
Right.
you're thinking about
Exactly.
homeschooling, I often say, talk to my wife, because she'll tell you that it's totally awesome. And she was homeschooled all the way through high school. And
so
super cool.
Gary in Texas is asking, how many years have you and Jess been married now?
11 and a half years now.
That's crazy.
Yeah, which is kind of wild. We dated for 5, and we didn't kiss until our wedding day, which is a whole story in and of itself.
I knew that. Okay, so now let's go into the missions thing.
Okay.
Talk about Heart for Missions. How did God work that into you?
So I'd say that first Thailand trip was the first time I ever saw missions, and I think we were probably 17.
Yeah, I was going to say you were 16 or 17 then. Yeah.
And from that, I knew then that I wanted to do something in my life that involved missions. That was the moment of realization of how meaningful this is, and how we can take so much of what God's given us to bless other people. And sometimes, like in the Hume's case, it wasn't so much, taking possessions or material things to another culture. It was just simply, hey, we're going to take an amazing camp experience and the gospel message, that's it, and do that for MKs in Thailand. And so that for me and for Jess both was a very significant moment of realizing that we wanted that to be a part of our life long term, and knew that God was calling us to do something like that to some extent. But we didn't know where or how or what. So we jumped into a few more Hume trips. We went to Germany. We went to Thailand again. We did some other things. And when we came to Rock Harbor Church down here in Southern California, that's our home church now. About 5 years into that, we were asked to go film the Uganda ministry in action. So we tagged along on a trip to Uganda in 2000, I want to say 14, something like that. Okay. 2014 or 15. And we absolutely went into that trip thinking, we're here to film and do our job, and that's it. And we even didn't really find ourselves like meshing with the team, or intentionally trying to be separate.
Okay.
And what ended up happening at the end of that trip is God said, no, you can't operate on a missions trip like that. And by the end of that trip, I think our perspective on all of it totally changed, because what ended up happening is we were there to film, but what ended up happening is we built relationships with the people we were filming.
Right.
And that was unexpected and really surprising. And at the end of that same trip, we thought we probably would never go back. If we do, maybe. I had an inkling in my heart that maybe, but Jess was like, nah, no big deal. Fast forward a year, and they said, hey, this is the anniversary of Rock Harbor and the church in Uganda. And just a little context, Rock Harbor planted a church 15 years ago now in Uganda that has since grown into 15 village churches. And so it's doing very well. It's really cool. It's a great ministry. And they said, it's been the 10-year anniversary. We want you to go back and film it again. And we're like, oh, okay, sure. And when we got there, the amount of people that we met on our first trip that remembered us and continued investing in us and vice versa was truly shocking. And that was kind of this moment of going, yeah, I think we want to stay invested here long term. And our church often said that, like, don't just go on a missions trip to experience it, although that's good for some to experience a missions trip. But at the end of that, decide if this is something you want to continue to invest in or not. Like if this is for you or not, or what part you have to play, whether that's coming back or can you play a part from the US financially or spiritually later on. And
So you guys are heading over there with the attitude like this is a one-time deal.
Totally.
Okay, wow.
We went with the mindset of thinking this is a one-time thing. And at the end of that second trip, the leaders on that trip said, "Hey, Brandon and Jess, so we watched you over the last 2 trips, and we're actually going to be stepping down from this role. And we think you'd be the right 2 people to take the role of leading the Uganda ministry at Rock Harbor." And we were like, what? I don't know. We said, we'll pray about it.
Right.
We didn't, it was definitely not like a, yeah, let's do it. It was more of a, I don't know if I want to be responsible for 15 people. Can we help carry that vision forward? Mainly just a lot of doubts set in after that.
Yeah.
And then
which I think is amazing. I love the fact that they went after you guys when you are the ones going, nah, it's not me. Like that's who, me? You know, versus it there's another, you know, attitude people can have where you're just like pushing, trying to go for status and I want to be this leader, where you guys are, you know, on the complete opposite side going, no, God, nope, no, not me.
Yeah, very much. Yeah. That totally how we thought about it was, I don't know about this, but then we said, we'll try one trip. That's what we said we'll do. We'll try leading one. And fast forward a year, we led our first trip. And on that trip, Jess and I had kind of an aha moment. It wasn't like a call up front to raise your hand. You know, it was none of those kind of flavors, other than Jess and I found ourselves talking at the like midway through that trip, leading the team, growing the team together, watching people serve in ministry together and going, oh my gosh, it is so amazing to help people step into their gifts. And I think that's what when we realized what like our role was in this, was to help bring people into an experience to discover what God's made them to do in their life, or use the things that God's given them in their life. And then subsequently we realized, like a flashback moment of our life story of growing up at Hume, growing up in a ministry context, growing up where very few things are totally planned out and we just fly by the seat of our pants a little bit. And if things have to change, no worries, we'll all just change it together. And we're at midnight working on an opener practice and you just pivot. And that was this moment of, I think God might have planned this already in some ways. For both of me and Jess's story to be in that moment where we were right then, leading a team to Uganda, going, wow, I think this is a gift we had and we didn't know we had.
So how many times have you guys been back?
So we've been back. We've led 3 teams now. We were planning on leading a team in June again for the 4th trip, but COVID. So we've got that team in a holding pattern waiting for whatever the border situation, vaccine situation looks like, so that we can take them back. So they're like, as soon as we can go, we will, for our 4th team. But that would be a total of, for me, I've been there six times, to our partners there, and Jess 5 times. And we've built some friendships there and relationships there that feel like brothers and sisters. Yeah. And when Rock Harbor and Gulu Bible Community Church talk about each other, it's never our American friends or our Uganda friends. It's really this picture of like one church and one body across international,
I love that,
global borders. Like there's never even when we're there, the pastor leadership of Gulu Bible Community Church talks about Rock Harbor like, this is our church. We are the same church, separated by the globe, but it's pretty special.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, because it's easy for us to become short-sighted and and even start to think of the Big C church as being more of our, our own context, and we can get things out of our context and start to look beyond our borders and realize that the church of God is massive. And there you go, you walk into a whole different culture, and there are people worshiping Jesus Christ, they're brothers and sisters in Christ, and you have something in common, and you get the Big C church kind of thing again.
And I feel like what I'm so inspired by each time we're there is I witness pastors. I think about Pastor Martin and Pastor Edwin on the ground there, and both of them have dreams and visions that I want to bring back to California. Like where they see the future of their church going, they've got this vision right now that they're calling Vision 2040, and the idea that they want 40 more church plants in northern Uganda over the next 20 years. And I'm just like, we don't think like that.
Right? Like where's my faith?
Right. And I think I'm always so inspired by that. And we don't really, honestly, when we lead teams to Uganda, and even Rock Harbor's connection to Uganda and the church there, we don't bring anything fancy we don't show up with a big plan to do this, that, or the other, right. Or we don't bring a bunch of supplies with us. It's mostly just, we're one church and we're just coming to participate in the ministry that you're already up to. And we want to be with you and learn from you and do the same things together. That's basically the philosophy of it.
I love it because, for years we saw missions. I shouldn't say we collectively, but there can be an attitude about missions from our side going, oh, poor them, we're going to help them. And we're going to use our American stuff to make them better. And where it's simply, hey, we're coming alongside and joining brothers and sisters in Christ around the world. And we realized really quickly that they probably, they probably have more to offer us than we have to offer them. Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's true pretty much every time I'm over there is I get a renewed sense of what it means to be all in.
Yeah.
I think is a good way to put it. Like what it means to be really all in with your faith and living it all the time. And that's pretty eye-opening.
Especially in cultures where they're up against more adversity, potentially than even politically than we are.
Something they say often is God didn't give us much, but he gave us joy. And I think that's pretty fascinating for me to see that. I often go over there with this mindset of, wow, here's the things that we have. And then when I hear what they don't have, we often, even our teams are like, oh, well, maybe we could fundraise for that, but instead it's more just like, we didn't need that before. We don't really need that now. And it's just a totally different perspective of what even matters.
Yeah.
And then even just the way that they're available to what God wants them to do. Like Sunday afternoons, the normal for Gulu Bible Community Church is for those that are available to go over to the government hospital and pray for people. Like that's just a normal Sunday afternoon.
They're not going home to watch their favorite football team lose?
Or go out to breakfast and then,
go to Marie Callender's. And
their next step for the day is, hey, anybody who wants to go, we're going over to the government hospital. And then the other thing they often do is go over to the local prison and do prayer ministry and stuff like that. And so
we just say conviction setting in right now?
Right.
I want to rush home to have my lazy Sunday afternoon.
Me too. Me too.
Okay, so you touched on something that Jessica's been over there with you 5 times, and you've been over 6, and that makes me think that wow, you and Jessica have this availability for both of you to go over there together. Like I couldn't go off on several mission trips with my wife and leave all my kids behind. What's up with that, Brandon? Leading question.
Yeah. So Jess and I don't have any kids, and we've many a times been asked why, or if everything's okay, or whatever. And our regular response is we've chosen not to have kids. And we just really believe that's because we're supposed to be a couple that's available to just be like, hey, can you lead a team in Uganda next month? And we are supposed to be that couple that goes, yep, we'll do it. And so, yeah, I mean, that's
okay.
like the short version of it.
I love it. I love it because it's so easy. Like we just get into a mindset of, here's our life as we grow up, we get married, we have kids, and we do that. And that's just what you're supposed to do. And yet my mind is immediately going to Paul telling people that they shouldn't get married. A young man shouldn't get married because of the distraction, basically, from him being able to do God's work. And I hear you and Jessica going, yeah, we're married, but we're this team that is serving the Lord together, and we get a chance to be able to do things that someone like me, April and me, we can't do because we got 4 kiddos that we're taking care of at home. And Brandon, I've got to commend you. I think that's such a cool, clear understanding of God's calling in your life, without any kind of worrying about a stigma that the world would put on you or anything like that.
I would say I don't want anyone listening to hear, because you have kids, you can't do God's calling or anything like that. Like, I don't want anyone to hear any version of that, or that we thought this out so perfectly that there's no selfish ambition in this decision. Truly, there is both. Like, I believe, yeah, like there's both sides of this. One side is, yeah, we think we're supposed to be the couple that can be available to do things like that. There's also the selfish side that is, we like travel, we like adventure, and we want to be able to go do that stuff too. So like, yep. It's not this necessarily like holy decision.
And I can guarantee you all out there, they've done some pretty cool vacations that the rest of us wouldn't do. So
I mean, there's both sides of that coin.
Yeah, sure.
And we've come to a mutual agreement. Like, it's not like Jess wanted kids and I didn't, or I wanted kids and Jess didn't. It was very much agreed upon. I don't know that this is for us, and that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah.
And I think that was, we decided up front we would wait 5 years and then see.
Okay.
And 5 years came and we went, our mind hasn't changed at all. And then 10 years came and we thought, our mind still hasn't changed at all. So we're like, all right, it's clear now, So
yeah, it's beautiful. And I think the thing that's important is it's easy for people to want the same kind of lifestyle we have for other people. I'll never forget that as a single guy. I mean, and it was for me, April and I didn't get married till I was 35. Right. And so when I was your age, there were a lot of people that were trying to fix me up with various people. And
so good.
And I'll never forget somebody that was so genuine in what they were saying, but they're like, you're not married, you're not dating anyone? And I'm like, no. And they looked me in the eyes and go, it must be so hard for you. And I'll never forget that moment, because I kind of stopped and I went, no, I'm doing okay. Like, yeah. And very well that those years, early adult years for me of not being married, I was able to have some really cool ministry opportunities that I wouldn't have been able to have otherwise. One of which that involved all of the crazy high school boys at Hume Lake. And
so Cliff won't say this, but I'll say this. And I think Noel might even be on here right now. But for those of you who want to know, there was a bunch of us Hume kids growing up in the mountains, and all of us were around the same age. We were all teenagers, 15 to 18. And Cliff really took us under his wing, and really, we did Bible study together. Cliff really just like invested in our lives. And I look back, thank you, Cliff, for that. Like, from the bottom of my heart, I would say how much that was transformative to who I am today, because you took the time out of your single life at the time to invest in us guys. And I'd say I'm a better man. I'm a better husband. I follow Jesus in ways that I probably wouldn't have because you paused and said, hey, I'm going to invest time into these guys. And I mean, you took us on adventures and all these things, but also just, hey, real life, let's talk about growing up and being a teenager and all this stuff. And that was so a big deal. So I'd say to that very point, like you even kind of taught me what it meant to be like, one of the things I remember you saying is always be transparent with people. And if you can, like if it's appropriate, be as transparent as you possibly can, because God will use that stuff to impact other people's lives. And like your transparency with us growing up was really impactful, and even leads me now to, I think about that often, of when people are asking me about my life, not hesitating to go into deep conversation about that stuff. Like talking about my mom, talking about, marriage, talking about all the things, like getting baptized while I was employed at a church and what that meant and all those things. So,
oh my goodness, you waited that long. No. Thank you, Brandon. It was one of those things, again, I look back and say, God gave me this period of time to be able to have a ministry that I wouldn't have had I been married through that season, and to have the freedom to be able. You guys, I was crazy. I bought a Suburban as a single guy.
It was brilliant.
And we would load all these kids in the Suburban and drive to Fresno and, whatever it was, go-karts or miniature golf or the movies or whatever. And some great ministry years that way. And so I want to, it's like, Brandon, I want to tell people, like, your ministry is where you are today. It's not where you are tomorrow. And I think a lot of people say, well, when I get to this place in life, then I can be able to really be used by God. I mean, I don't think anyone says that outright, but we feel that way, or we think that way. And,
for sure.
And again, I look at you and Jess and go, what a great example of, two people that have figured out how to minister right there where they are right now. Okay, we're rapidly running out of time, so I want to hit on two more things if we can.
Okay.
You mentioned your mom.
Yeah.
Diana Setter. What an amazing woman. And you're probably going to well, maybe we'll both end up with some tears here. But tell us a little bit about the journey of your mom and ultimately losing your mom, and all that here.
Sure. So everybody ready to go real deep for a second?
Yeah.
So my mom, amazing woman. Like, most people knew her as the face of Hume's General Store. And I remember after she passed away, just a little context of her was people would tell me, I'd go to the general store every morning for my cup of coffee just to talk to your mom for 30 minutes about life and what I was struggling with or whatever. And like that was my mom. She was 4'11", super spicy person in all the kind of loving, wonderful ways.
That is such a good description. I love it.
Yeah. But at the same time, just had this ability to be like, how are you doing today? And you better tell her what is really going on and not just good. Like that's really what she was good at. And so my mom, for many, many years, had a kidney disease that turned into needing dialysis right after she retired. She was 64. And that was a pretty significant moment in my parents' life. My dad all but dropped everything, his career, job. Like, there was a significant window where it was like, drop everything, take care of mom. Dialysis is really serious for those of you who may not really know what that's like, but it's a pretty last ditch kind of effort in someone's life. Anyways, all that to say, in the middle of dialysis and getting that set up, they discovered that my mom had bladder cancer, and it was a pretty serious stage. So they said, we've got to get on this right away. And, the short version of that would be, I remember after my mom's first chemo, going up to the Fresno area to visit my parents for the weekend, and her giving me like a really long, unusually long hug afterwards. Like one of those hugs that just felt weird afterwards. I remember driving home thinking that was unusual. Maybe she knew something wasn't right. I don't know. But that same week, a couple days later, they were just having lunch at Chick-fil-A and she couldn't breathe. And then that turned into going straight to the emergency room. And she coded 2 times that afternoon. They revived her and put her in the ICU. And for the next roughly 10 days, her body essentially just kind of shut down one step at a time. And it wasn't the cancer that really took her out. It was more her immune system not being able to deal with the chemo along with dialysis at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, it was just for her, that was the end of the battle for. It was just really fast, super, super fast. And in that journey, I mean, we can go wherever direction you want to go, but I think the biggest piece of that is I feel like God allowed me to kind of process that real time in some ways, as opposed to like having a significant breakdown later. But I just remember moments along that journey, walking with my dad and people that came into the hospital. I remember just friends showing up that I hadn't even seen in a while. Noel showed up, and that meant a lot to me. And
I
Noel
think
and I have talked about that.
Was he living in Southern California already?
No, I don't even know where he might have been. I don't know where he was living at the time, but I was just shocked when different people showed up just to be available, and people that were significant throughout our life over the years. And those were big deals. And this is me at 26 years old at the time. Right. My mom's been gone next week, 8 years, I think. But even walking that with my dad was something that as a 26-year-old kid, I never would have imagined needing to go through. And I just remember on that like 10th day in the ICU, me and dad sitting in front of the window down at the hospital and going, what do we do? And kind of talking together through the process of how long do we push this forward? And the doctors even saying things like, even if we can get her stabilized, she still has to do chemo again. Like the cancer will take her even if we get her stabilized. So what do you guys want to do about this? And I'm so grateful because we had one amazing evening with my mom on that like ninth day where she kind of.
And I was hoping you'd share this part because I think this is really powerful.
And that being on that 9th day, we really hadn't seen her most of those 10 days. She was pretty out of it, or just fighting for every breath of life, like everything over those 10 days. On that 9th evening, they got the tube out of her throat, and she kind of became coherent. This was probably her last kind of go at it. But we spent that whole day really being able to talk, like me and dad. And I have a half sister. We were all there with her talking to my mom, and my mom really asking if we would be okay if she departed. And we were like, we'll be okay. Are you sure you want to? But it was this really beautiful time of talking about her faith and her reassuring us of her faith. And it was beautiful. I'm so deeply grateful for that afternoon that God gave us with her. Yeah. And I know so many don't get that. And I think that moment was just a miracle, truly a miracle from God.
Well, in so many ways, she released you guys to be able to let her go.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it was there's no version of that is nice to ever have to do or come to a decision of, or
especially process. As a 26-year-old. I mean,
right.
You're and for the most part, you're the only child. I mean, obviously, and here's your dad. You're not living at home anymore, so your dad's alone. I watched you walk, from a distance. I watched you walk through things with him, in what seemed, Well, no, you know what? I'll tell people, go listen to Noel's podcast, The Fire You Carry, and you'll get the elongated version of this story that I think there are some things you say in there about walking with your dad through it, and things that you know, wished you had said, and things that you did that are pretty powerful. I'll just leave it at this. I remember seeing a side of your dad through that entire process that I hadn't seen before. And you know, because your dad is one of these, you know, like hardy, he
Oh yeah.
belongs in the mountains, strong, you know, kind of men.
A
you
mental
know?
picture of my dad is he's missing the tips of many of his fingers from a saw accident.
Right?
His hands are made of leather. He's a little gruff. His favorite hobbies are fishing and being in the woods, you know, and hunting and all those things. And so from most people's perspective, he's a little prickly, but down inside, man,
Oh,
he is an absolute teddy bear.
he is. And I'll tell you, over the years, and he was amazing, as you know, when we lost our daughter Elise, your dad was incredibly kind and gentle to me, and I'll never forget times when he would, I mean, he came to our house, and he called me Clifford, and he's like, how you doing, Clifford? And but just loved on me, and in a way that Ron could, you know. And anyway, I just, you know, I'll look back, Brandon. I think through the day that your mom did pass, and I remember seeing you at the hospital and marveling at how God was carrying you through that. I mean, in so many ways, you had become just this beautiful example of joy in the midst of trial. And I know that it was not an easy time, and I'm sure you've had hard times since, many, I'm sure, but God really lifted you up and gave you the ability to have strength that was far beyond your own strength through that season. And if anything, for everybody that's watching out there, I think through how, you know, God gives us strength that we don't have, that is not our own. Because I'll never forget looking at you going, I don't know how Brandon is walking through this, and having the kind of joy, unconditional joy that he's having with it. And I'll never forget your mom's service. I think the song 10,000 Reasons showed up and was really significant during that time.
100%. I mean, one of the things my mom said when she stepped into her cancer process was, God hasn't given me a lot of hard things in life, but this is what I'm supposed to carry, and I'm supposed to carry it with joy. And I think I carry that. I think I carried those words through most of it, or even through all of it, when knowing my mom was always that person that's like, you don't know if you've got tomorrow, so do it, you know? Like, she was always that person. And I think that's one of the,
yeah, I mean, let's here. This will be a good segue out of this and into a kind of our final thing for the day. So, what some of you at Sunrise don't know is when oh goodness gracious, I'm going to say it was April, and I got married in 2004. So 2003, I got my pilot's license in June of 2003. And you know, what else are you going to do as a single guy in his 30s? And you know, like, with your extra money, you go get your pilot's license. And so I'd gotten my pilot's license, and I wanted to go flying. And so I thought, maybe Brandon and Evan will go for a flight with me. And I'll never forget, you know, asking your mom, like, hey, can I take Brandon on a flight? And you know, we're talking tiny plane, right? And with a guy that has literally 40.1 hours of flying time at that point. And I may have had 40.9 by there. But, and I go to your mom and I'm like, hey, what would you think if I took Brandon on a flight? And she's like, go for it.
That's so accurate.
Right? And I'm thinking,
so accurate.
but don't you know I'm dangerous?
don't you know I just learned how to fly?
Right? Like literally just learned how to fly. And I think we went over to San Luis Obispo
Yep,
or something and came back by Harris Ranch and just had a great time, which you were quite an excellent. I let you take
we
control
did. That was
for
cool.
a good chunk of that flight. And you had the amazing ability to keep it straight and level. Um,
Or you had the controls. I'm not sure which, but it
no,
was really awesome.
I had the pedals. I didn't, you had the yoke. I had the pedals.
That was
Um,
pretty cool.
but so okay, so here you are, you're in your young 30s now, Brandon, and you've had this little passion for aviation over the years, and it was obvious that day as a whatever teen-year-old you were, that you had something, you know, in you that was really attracted to aviation. How has that fleshed itself out in your life?
The oh man, this is really exciting for me, at least. I mean, I know aviation isn't for everybody, but just this last year, since I was 5 years old, I've been dreaming about learning how to fly, and specifically learning how to fly helicopters. And Jess basically said to me, "All right, here's the deal. You talk about this every time you see a helicopter fly over. You pretty much tell me every time. And so instead of telling me about it, how about you go learn how to fly?" And I'm like, "Yeah, are you sure?" And she's like, "Go do it." And
I love it.
yeah, it
But
was
that's
100%.
But isn't that the same person who kept pulling your earbud out on that
Yeah.
flight? You know, it's just like, no, you do this.
Yeah. Same
Yeah,
person that pulled my
that's
earbud
good.
out. What, I guess it's probably 15 years ago now, is the same person. I mean, my wife's awesome.
Yeah.
And for those of you who have gotten to meet her or know her, she's one cool human and just amazing person. And but she's as adventurous as me, if not more so. And so she pushes me, and so she was the one that's like, "Go do this. You've been talking about it. Now get going." And so as of talking right now,
Okay.
I'm I guess I'm 2.5 months. I started in October, 2.5 months into flight training for helicopters. I've got almost 15 flight hours, and
Nice.
I'm literally going to ground school this afternoon at 3:30.
Fantastic.
So it's been a really cool journey so far.
I
Yeah,
love that you are doing that.
yeah.
I absolutely love that you're doing that. And I strongly commend you for it. It's that's so cool. And who knows what God will do with that over time,
I I
right?
have no idea. I hope it's cool stuff because I
Yeah.
want to use it. If I could find a way to use that for ministry, that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. But that's everything, right? You know,
That's true.
and God allows you to, you know, and I think through what you said about how you and Jess are living, and you know, you get to serve God and have this ministry, but you also get to enjoy it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's fun at the same time, and there are hard times along the way, but what a fun thing. And Brandon, this has been really cool, and I told you ahead of time I was hoping that it could just feel like people are a fly on the wall on two old friends catching up on life, and uh, but this has been a good time hanging out with you. So I never really got into, so what do you do for a living?
Oh,
You're in your office right now, so tell us, just as we kind of close things out here, what do you do for a living, and how does that work for you and Jess and all of that?
this my background has nothing to do with what I do for a living.
Awesome.
These are space photos from my wife's grandfather. When he passed away, he had these, and we thought they were the coolest. So this is like
Awesome.
Apollo 11 photos. But what Jess and I do for a living, I was staff at Rock Harbor Church for 8 years as their video director, overseeing all creative video, anything. And in the midst of that, I fell in love with telling stories for nonprofits. Part of that was the missions world that helped me love doing that. And I approached our lead pastor about 5 years ago and said, "Hey, I've got this dream to like start a video company that helps businesses and nonprofits tell their stories." And I thought that was me putting in my 2 weeks. And he said, "Can we be your first client?" And so truly, I have to give all the credit to Rock Harbor. They were the ones that helped me even get off my
Help
feet.
launch you. Yeah.
And then a year later, into that endeavor, Jess quit her job. She was a first grade teacher, and she said, "You can't go on all these travels without me. And so find a way to get me in in the company." And so I handed her a camera, and it turns out daughter of an artist is pretty good at filmmaking.
Yep.
And
I believe it.
and so that turned into us really kind of starting our company together. We work together full time. That's not for everybody, but Jess and I have no problem working together. We're around each other all the time. So
I believe it.
Yeah, we just roll with the punches. And
I believe it.
yeah, that's what we do. We work here in Orange County, mostly working with nonprofits of all sizes and telling their stories. We definitely do corporate stuff too, but that's kind of the bubble that we're in, is short form, high end stories that, inspire people. That's kind of our jam.
Short form, high end stories that inspire people. You have inspired me today, Brandon. I love it. Hey, let me take a moment and pray as we close things off here this morning. Father, it has been, it's just fun to sit here and talk to my old friend. Thank you so much for how you have been working in Brandon's life and in Jessica's, not just to bring them together, but Lord, how you have cemented them together as this amazing couple that serves you and loves you and seeks to tell the gospel story through video. And how cool is that? I just pray that you will continue to use them, and Father, would it be that Brandon is protected in the sky as he continues to learn to fly helicopters, and I pray that is another way that you would just make yourself known through that for him. And God, we praise you and thank you for how you faithfully walk with us through the fun times, through the really hard times, and more than anything, that you make yourself known. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Man.
Well, for all of you out there that are watching from Sunrise that we are, we want to remind you that on Wednesday at 2:00, we will have Pastors Live, and we are hoping to probably have Pastor Greg Triplett join us from the East Coast out there. So we're going to check in with him. One of our pastors moved out to the East Coast, and they just got settled there last week. So we're going to say hi and catch up there. And there may or may not be a Luke Miller podcast this week. I announced it yesterday, and Luke's like, I'm not sure I was going to do that. So, but we hope that you're enjoying the Christmas season, staying warm, and can't wait to have you back next week on the Back Shed. We'll be welcoming Juliana Law, who is one of our missionaries from Ukraine, who happens to be back here on a 2-month time at home. So if you were at church or watched us online yesterday, you would have seen Juliana. And she'll be joining us for a much more extensive conversation about what God's been doing over these last 9 months in her life. So again, thank you everyone for joining us on the Back Shed today. Have a fantastic week, and I will see you next week. Brandon, thank you too.
Bye everybody. Thanks for hanging out.
Thank you.